5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Calix Boxing here. Calcast is back for episode 5 tonight, and some interesting things to talk about in the news. Hope this camera does better than it did last night, by the way. Let me get this thing straight. I think we're good there. Hopefully not blurry like it was last night. We're going to talk Lomachenko's return. Let me get this comment section up. Make sure if you hop in the chat. What's up to Haplotype? Haplotype 0 in the house, says Calix. What's up? What's up, man? Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for everybody that's tuned in. Getting some good views on these shows for the first week back. So looking forward to building this brand back. Shout out to D-Style Boxing and G Funky, who was watching their show earlier. Always good stuff with them. I want to talk about some other topics tonight. Lomachenko's return. And this is what I've been waiting for. Everybody was so quick, so quick to throw Lomachenko away. Just nobody's talking about him as far as the 135 picture. Everybody's talking about these young cats. Everybody's been talking about Ryan Garcia. What's he going to do? What's Tank Davis going to do entering 135? What are we going to do about Devin Haney? Who is he going to fight next? Teofimo Lopez, what's he going to do next? And more on that. I'm going to do that tomorrow on Teofimo Lopez because I hear there's some issues, some trouble in paradise, some issues with money as far as his April mandatory. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow. But tonight I wanted to talk about Lomachenko and focus on that because nobody seems to be focusing on that. We're going to talk about Pacquiao as well, possible opponents for his upcoming return. He's supposed to be training already and dropping some big news here pretty soon. I'm guessing he's going to be dropping this news in the next week or two. So I'm looking forward to that. And we're going to talk about some possible opponents. And also the 31st anniversary of Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas. It's going to recap that as well before this show ends. And Haplotype, you already stole my thunder there, but we're going to talk about that. Nakatani. That is a good fight, man. Is a good fight. The reason I've been interested about Lomachenko is he seems to be lurking back there. Everybody's writing him off, right? I mean, you lose a fight to a great fighter. He's coming off of shoulder surgery as well. And everybody seems to be just, we're not even going to talk about him with the mix at 135. Maybe he should drop down to 130 or maybe even all the way back down to 126. I disagree, man. 135 is the division. It's a hot division. And I think he still matches up with these top guys at 135. Let's just not write this guy off after one loss. All right. Second loss of his career, but after one loss in several years, we're writing this guy off. Lomachenko is rumored that he's going to fight Nakatani, and I'm going to butcher his first name, so I'm not even going to mention it. I am horrible with the Japanese name. So Nakatani is a potential opponent. And for those of you who don't know Nakatani, knocked out Felix Verdejo in the 9th round in, I think it was last month or maybe December they fought. So Nakatani's coming off of a good win. He's a perfect opponent for this type of fight. Just think of Lomachenko. It's going to be about a year. They're talking about doing this fight in early summer. So it's going to be about a year of him coming back. So there's going to be ring rust there. There's also going to be the shoulder injury, head shoulder surgery. So a legit shoulder injury in that fight. And I'll be interested to see how bad is that shoulder injury? How bad was it? Did it really affect his performance against Teofimo? I say no because he claims that he had the shoulder injury maybe in the 4th round or something, and he looked horrible before that. He was way too tentative going into that fight, and credit to Teofimo Lopez for doing that. The size difference, shout out Daniel Lim, the size difference will be insane. And that's one of the things I'm interested in this fight is I actually favor Teofimo in that type of fight, in that you see Canelo at 168. He does better against rangy, tall fighters. He knows how to get inside and dig into the body. I think Lomachenko is that type of guy too. Is if you can't use your size against Lomachenko, it's going to completely flip on you to where it becomes not only is it not an asset to you? It's a complete liability. What's good, Lance Meyer? Thanks for hopping in the chat. Hit that like button as y'all come in. And if y'all aren't sub, man, hit that sub button. Appreciate that. And appreciate all the new subs I've been getting, man. Crazy, crazy. The brand is building back up. Good to be back. But he'll flip it from an asset to a liability. These guys, it seems as though that range, 5-inch height difference, 10-inch reach difference would be an asset for the taller, rangier fighter. But when you have a guy who knows how to fight a taller fighter and he can't use that reach against you, it turns completely inside out to where these guys just get inside and dig into the body. And Canelo does that to guys at 168, and Lomachenko has the ability to do that. He not only the ability, he's been doing it at 135 to where he gets inside and slices these guys up. Loma needs to start the smoke earlier in the fight than he did with Tio by far. Yes, yes. And these are all the questions we want answered, right? And that's why I'm so intrigued by this and why I've been waiting for this news to break is he's been way too quiet. He's been way too quiet. People have been way too ready to write him off as a top guy at 135. And what's going to happen in this fight? The reason Nakatani is such a perfect opponent for him is like I said, he has a style that Lomachenko can turn against Nakatani. Nakatani is the type of guy who, coming off a good win, but maybe overvalued coming off of a big win. So if Lomachenko comes in and completely guts this guy, then you say, okay, Lomachenko is back for business. Lomachenko is back in business. He just beat a guy who knocked out Verdejo. Looked impressive doing it. So we're ready to get him back in there with top opposition at 135. He grabs the mic after the fight and says, I want a rematch with Teofimo, or I want Ryan Garcia, or anybody. He can throw out 5 or 6 names at 135 that people would get excited about if he comes in and knocks out Nakatani or looks impressive doing it, right? Shout out Mr. Boxing today too. And I've said this for years, man, while he's up on the chat, one of the best channels on the YTBC. I've said that about D-Style Boxing as well. G-Funky's entering that realm. Just guys that I really appreciate their content. So keep that up. But as far as Nakatani, man, he can be an entertaining fighter as well. So a tall guy who can be active in the ring. So that can be tailor-made for Lomachenko to look good against. And a guy coming off of a knockout victory. So if, let's say, Lomachenko comes back, knocks out Nakatani, looks good, everything goes well, calls out top fighter, he's back for business. He's back for business at 135. We can throw him back in the mix as a top 2, 3, 4, 5, however you want to rank him, guy at 135. And the names start to pile up as far as Lomachenko, because Lomachenko is a guy with a name who looked very... what's the word we can use? Shaky against Teofimo. He looked like a guy that, these other young guys are watching this fight, licking their chops like, okay. So Lomachenko all of a sudden is a guy who's vulnerable at 135 for these young lions to come pick off. So if Lomachenko comes out, looks good, these other guys will still have the Teofimo fight fresh on their minds and say, I still want that guy. I want to fight Lomachenko. So those names are going to come to him if he looks impressive and gets back in the business. However, if he comes out against Nakatani and looks horrible, like, I mean, when Prince Nassim had his only loss to Marco Antonio Barrera, came back one fight after and looked awful, and retired. We never saw him again. Will Lomachenko be one of those type of guys? I don't think so. I don't think he's cut from the same cloth. But let's say he comes out against Nakatani and doesn't look good. What do we do then? All right, we start to look at him maybe as damaged goods. Like Teofimo maybe snatched his soul, took that aura off of him. Maybe the shoulder is worse off than we thought. Or maybe he's just not the guy at 135 that we thought this whole time. So these questions are going to start to get answered here. Even if he wins that fight and goes to decision and wins like an 8-4 type of fight or 9-3, it doesn't look all that impressive doing it. Then we start to say, maybe Lomachenko is not a top 4 or 5 guy at 135, but the good thing for Lomachenko, regardless, is even if he beats Nakatani in this fight and doesn't look impressive, that might even be better for him as far as bringing these young lions to the table. Because, like I said, he has the Lomachenko name. That's a name to put on your resume. And the more vulnerable he looks, it happens for all fighters. The more vulnerable you look, if you have a name, the more ready these guys are to come and fight you. Right. So let's look at some comments. Daniel Lim, the Loma fight was so confusing. Most times fighters start that slowly. They're totally outclassed, but Loma did great. That's what I'm saying. Like, I didn't understand. It was almost like he was shell shocked by Teofimo's quickness as much as he was in speed, as much as he was the power in those the first 6 rounds baffled me. And he did look good 7 through 11. And that's why I was happy that Teofimo did what he did in the 12th round and took that fight off the table, because I was worried that we were going to have one of those things where it was a tale of 2 completely different fights, and then we're going to have controversy if Lomachenko came on strong in 7 through 12. What if you scored a round for Lomachenko in those first 6 rounds? Was it a draw? So I'm glad that Teofimo came and took that fight off the table and won that fight decisively after that. But a lot to be answered here. A lot to be answered here for Lomachenko. Do you think Loma has a chance in a rematch against Teo? I've discussed that with D-Style as well, because D-Style and G-Funky, when we talked about it on their panel, were totally against a rematch. And I disagree. I think a rematch still has to be at least on the table. If Lomachenko, what you think Uncensored last night? Uncensored was great, man. Uncensored was great. D-Style Boxing in the chat. A lot to talk about with that Uncensored last night, and I'm sure we'll be getting on that with the glove gate and whatnot with Margarito. But back to Lomachenko, I don't take that rematch off the table. I don't take it off the table because let's say Lomachenko puts together 2 or 3 good performances, really good performances, knocks guys out, calls out Teofimo after each fight, and Teofimo is still at 135. To me, that's the big question mark. How much longer will Teofimo be at 135? But let's say he goes up to 140. I mean, that's only one division north. Will Lomachenko follow him there if he wants that rematch? I tend to think that the rematch isn't going to happen, to be quite honest. I would give it like an 80 to 20% chance that it won't happen. I just think that there are so many options for both guys in and around 135 and it seems like Teofimo and his team have moved on to bigger things. So I just think there are so many different options for those guys, and a lot of boxing fans were like, it wasn't as entertaining as of a fight that we thought, and it wasn't as competitive as we thought, to be honest. I mean, most people had it 8-4, something like that. At the very, that's the closest people had it. 8-4. So Teofimo did his thing, man, and he deserves some big things that happen. And Lomachenko has to work himself back up. So that's far off. I just want to see Lomachenko against Nakatani. Let's see what he does if that fight does come off in June or July. And let's get Lomachenko back in the mix and see where he's at as a fighter after that loss. I always love to see guys of that class coming off their first loss to see what happens. Like I said, I always throw out the example of Prince Nassim Hamed because we saw who he was after that loss to Barrera. Came back one fight, just didn't have it. Didn't have it anymore. Didn't have it in his heart. Barrera snatched his soul, and that was it. Did Teofimo snatch? We know he beat Lomachenko, but did he snatch his soul? That's the question that's going to be answered this summer. But glad Lomachenko's back, man. Let's not write him off. Pacquiao's return. Let's talk about that for a minute. It was announced yesterday that Pacquiao said, I got big news coming. I'm training again, and the fight will be announced. Big news coming. So Pacquiao will be returning soon. I don't know when it is. I don't know when it's going to be announced, but there are already names floating out there. And we've heard the Ryan Garcia rumors for a while. Let's talk about some possible opponents. And y'all throw out in the chat If you're watching this in the archive, throw it out in the comment. Who do you want? And I'm going to put a poll up. Who do you want Manny Pacquiao to fight next? And it's an interesting question because you would think, oh, it's 2021. Pacquiao's still around. A couple of years ago, you would have thought, does it really matter who Pacquiao's fighting? Yes. He just beat Keith Thurman in his last fight. Although it was a year and a half ago, like I said, everybody lost 2020, right? Nobody was fighting in 2020. So a year and a half ago, in his last fight, he beat Keith Thurman. So he's still very much in the mix at the top of the welterweight division. His name still rings in the boxing world. People still want to watch this guy fight. Still a living legend. All right, so let's talk about possible opponents. Who do we think he's going to fight? Who do we want him to fight? I know who I want him to fight. I know the fights I want to see at 147. The top one, of course, is Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr., but we're not going to get that fight. We all know we're not going to get that fight. That's why it's a difference between want and who do we think. Wanting and thinking. My best guess is Crawford versus Spence isn't going to happen anytime soon. It does not seem like Spence wants that smoke. So why not do Terrence Crawford versus Manny Pacquiao? Let's throw that one out there first. I mean, Pacquiao didn't leave Top Rank on really bad terms, to be honest. He could still work out a fight with Bob Arum and Terrence Crawford if the money's right. And I guess that's the big thing without fans. Would they do this in Macau or something like that? Would they do this overseas where they could put a bunch of money on the table and get these two guys to fight? I guess that's a big question. The other question is, will Manny Pacquiao get in there with Terrence Crawford? Will Manny Pacquiao take an easier fight at 42 years old? Although still arguably a top 3 welterweight, will he take a fight like a Danny Garcia or a Mikey Garcia? Two guys who it seems like when they step up at 147, and I've said this about Danny Garcia for years now, I think he's overvalued, one of the most overvalued fighters in the sport. I've taken heat for that, but every time he steps up at 147, he comes up short. So I think if you're a Manny Pacquiao and you've been off for a year and a half, and maybe you plan on fighting 2, 3, 4 more times, because it seems like he's Tom Brady. It seems like he's willing to fight into his mid-40s. Tom Brady, you talk to Tom Brady about will I retire? Tom Brady, they asked him about that after the Super Bowl. He said, no, I'm coming back. He don't even hesitate. The guy wants to work out 4 or 5 year deals. He wants to play until he's like 46, 47 years old. Manny Pacquiao is not talking about retirement at all. So if you're a guy who plans on fighting 3, 4 more times at 42 years old, why not take a lighter touch coming back after a year and a half? Why not fight a Danny Garcia or a Mikey Garcia, one of the Garcias at 147? He could do that, right? He can fight one of those guys for a lighter touch, guys who have a name. This is a perfect opponent, perfect type of opponent. Those two guys have a name that boxing fans know, and they're fights that Pacquiao can easily win. Those are very winnable fights for Pacquiao at 147 at this point in his career at 42. Or he could go the other way with it. So, I mean, you have Danny Garcia, Mike Garcia, or Pacquiao can come back and say, hey, I'm not getting any younger. I just won against Keith Thurman a year and a half ago, coming off of a win. Give me Terrence Crawford. What a gangster move that would be, right? That would be an awesome move in a fight that everybody would want to see. And it would do numbers, man. It would definitely be, that would be Terrence Crawford's night to shine right there. That would be the fight he's been waiting for. Finally, he gets the big name at 147 he's been waiting for. And Pacquiao has a chance to add even more to his legacy if he pulls that off. So if Pacquiao is going to fight Crawford at some point, you got to do it now before you age even more, right? Why not do it at 42 instead of 43 or 44? At some point, you're going to get too old to even be competitive against a guy like that. And I've been vocal in that I think Terrence Crawford beats anybody at 147, Errol Spence included. Errol Spence included. That would be the most competitive fight, Errol Spence, obviously. Almost a 50-50 fight, but I would put it 60-40 Crawford as far as odds. That's how high I am on Crawford. Errol Spence, a great fighter, but I put Terrence Crawford head and shoulders above everybody in and around 147. I think the guy is special, and he's just waiting for that moment. He's waiting for that fight that he'll eventually get. He will eventually get it. So Terrence Crawford, if Manny Pacquiao were to come to the table, he would jump at it, obviously. But the money has to be there. Will the money be there? Now, will Manny Pacquiao fight Errol Spence Jr.? It would seem like not right now. It seems like Errol Spence Jr. is paving the way for his mandatory. So I don't know if that fight's going to happen. But another name to throw out there nonetheless. I don't see Pacquiao versus Errol Spence either. Ryan Garcia. Is that the fight y'all want to see? Because it's not the fight I want to see. I've been vocal. I want Ryan Garcia to fight the top 135 pounders, and I want Manny Pacquiao to fight the top 147 pounders. This is the year of the unification. Use that blueprint. Top 4 belts in each division. Use that blueprint to get these top fighters fighting each other, despite the politics, and give us the top fights in these weight classes. That's what I want to see. So I don't want to see Manny Pacquiao versus Ryan Garcia. It seems like Golden Boy has thrown some cold water on that. So good. I'm glad to see that. I don't want to see that fight. Although it would be a good consolation match. I wouldn't be mad at it, but I want to see other things. I would watch it, but I wouldn't be mad at it. Another name to throw out there, Sean Porter. Although it doesn't seem like Sean Porter was jumping at this fight either, which is weird. I don't think that fight would play out stylistically great. But I don't know. Just another name to throw out there. And I like Sean Porter at 147. Sean Porter has done some great things at 147. He seems like to be one of the only PBC fighters who continues on a consistent basis wants to fight top opposition. So who knows? Possibility. That's a wild card for the Manny Pacquiao sweepstakes. Another wild card would be Conor McGregor. I've heard his name still thrown out there. I'm still baffled by it. At this point in 2021, man, I don't understand the Conor McGregor. I don't understand the Conor McGregor love at this point. It seems to me like if you can't even not only dominate, but win in your own sport, what's with this crossover talk? Like, why are we still talking Conor McGregor against Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather or what's the guy's name that does YouTube videos? Why are we still talking about that? Like, dude, you have to beat the top opposition in your own sport, right? Like, I just want to see him focus on his own sport. Focus on your own sport. Try to be a top UFC fighter. I'm just baffled by that. Why are there still talks? Who are these people? Why are there still talks of Conor McGregor against guys like Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather? I've even heard the Floyd Mayweather rematch floated out there. Why? And the YouTube guy, I forgot the YouTube guy's name. Maybe somebody can put it in the chat. I don't remember the guy's name. Why are we talking about him fighting that guy? Perfect your own craft. We want to see you fight the top opposition in your own sport. So those are names floated out there. Who I want him to see, who I want to see Manny Pacquiao fight is Terrence Crawford. That's the fight I want to see. I want to see Manny Pacquiao come out, drop his balls, and say, I'm fighting Terrence Crawford. Would be a huge fight. And Terrence Crawford deserves that. He deserves that. He deserves the love, man. Give Terrence Crawford the love. Somebody cross the street and fight this guy. Come on. We need Terrence Crawford in that big fight, man. The sports world needs to see this guy. But who do I think he's going to fight? I think it's going to be a guy like Danny Garcia or Mikey Garcia. I think it's going to be a guy with a name who he's going to come back and fight and try to look good against and get that buzz going again. And then it's going to be the big fight in the next one. Or it's going to be one of those crossover fights, which I hate. I don't know who the crossover opponent would be. Hopefully not Conor McGregor, but I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. No. Fight a boxer. What a novel idea, right? A boxer fighting a boxer. That's what I want to see. What a novel idea. A UFC fighter fighting a UFC fighter. Give me that. Along with the unification matches, I want to see guys staying in their own sport. That's what I want to see. Nothing's getting solved by this. We're not finding out what the supreme sport is between UFC and boxing by doing this. I don't understand I understand the entertainment fights. I get that. Roy Jones versus Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield possibly, but these entertainment fights, I don't get it. I'm missing that wave. He already kind of ducked Crawford when they were both at top rank. I think Errol is a better fight, more possible. Possibly. I just think that Errol Spence Jr. is paving the way for that mandatory. That's what it looks like to me as far as the business side. So I think that the Terrence Crawford fight actually has more of a chance from what I'm seeing on the business side, but I don't see either one of them playing out in this next fight. I just don't. Another thing I'm going to be talking about tomorrow as far as fighters, and I wanted to talk about that Teofimo Lopez being shorted some money tomorrow. We'll be talking about that tomorrow, and I also want to be talking about Charlo saying that he wants to fight one time this year. He's the anti Canelo. He wants to fight one time this year, he says, and he wants it against Canelo. One time. Like the movie Little Giants. One time, dude. Coming off of 2020, you want to fight one time? No. Get active. And you want to fight Canelo? No. Be Canelo. Canelo wants to fight 5 times in 12 months. That's what I'm talking about. Drop your balls, Canelo, on these dudes. Show them how it's done. 5 times in 12 months you want to fight and you want to do it against top opposition. That's what I'm talking about. That's a warrior. That's a guy going for legacy. Be like Canelo. If you're a fighter out there, be like Canelo. Use that as your example. But the last topic I wanted to hit on, man, is a lot of nostalgia floating through me right now. Yeah, he's pretty much saying he wants to get paid. but do a light touch before the fight, right? I mean, just fight some dude, fight a cab driver, fight an Uber driver. Be active, man. Like we're coming off of 2020. Like nobody fought in 2020. You want to fight one time, man? Like Gary Russell Jr.? No. Be active, man. Just be active. I'm not asking for much. Just be active. I want to see Charlo in there, man. Knockout artist. That's what I'm talking about. Daniel Lynn, no, we don't want to see Ryan versus Pac. I don't want to see Ryan versus Pac either. I just don't, man. I want to see Pacquiao mixing it up with the top 147 pounders, and I want to see Ryan Garcia mixing up with the top 135 pounders. Man, let's get this buzzing. Enough with getting cute and clever with these fights. Stay in your division and fight the top opposition. But Mike Tyson versus Buster Douglas happened 31 years ago today. Crazy. It's been 31 years because I still remember. The nostalgia is going right now, man. There are 2 events that I remember from elementary school that on that Monday after in the cafeteria, like all the kids hitting this mic, but all the kids in the lunchroom and at recess, we're talking about 2 events, sporting events. And I don't know why I remember these 2 clearly. It was Mike Tyson getting beat by Buster Douglas and Carl Lewis getting beat by Ben Johnson in the 100-meter dash. Those are 2 that I remember clearly. And just crazy to think that was 31 years ago. And just thinking about where I was at the time, watching the fight, who I talked to after at like 7, 8 years old, who I was talking to, who I talked to in the cafeteria. a guy that I'm still friends with was one of the kids that I was talking to in the cafeteria after that fight. And we were just all amazed that this dude who seemed invincible, like nobody ever thought that this dude was going to lose. Nobody. Like Mike Tyson lose? Like nobody was even questioning that. Like 42-1 underdog. Yeah, like the president, Mr. Boxing Today says, I remember the morning of Sports Center ran it like the president got shot. Yeah, I mean, it was it was crazy, man. Like people were somber. A lot, I think that's the mood that it was shock and sadness is what I remember, which was crazy for a sporting event. And D Style says it perfectly, like the fastest man and the toughest man getting beat. And that's what it was back in the day. It was heavyweight fighting. It was fastest man in the world. Like Carl Lewis was just destroying dudes. Carl Lewis was Usain Bolt, man, before Usain Bolt. And Usain Bolt took it to another level, obviously, but Carl Lewis was that type of guy as well. Like nobody thought Carl Lewis was going to lose a race. No. It was like thinking Michael Johnson was going to lose a 200-meter dash wearing gold shoes. Wasn't going to happen. Yet this dude who ended up being roided up, which Carl Lewis probably was as well, muscle-bound dude from Canada comes in and beats him. And everybody was just shocked. And it was the same thing with Mike Tyson, except even more so, like 100 times more so. It was just a somber, sad day, and nobody ever thought this guy was going to lose. Ever, 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 ever. So to see the toughest man, the baddest man on the planet, Minnesota Vikings purple, nah, man. We don't mess with the Minnesota Vikings up here. D-style, we don't mess with that. Minneapolis Miracle is still fresh on my mind. But nah, man, for 42-1 underdog, and I remember the fight playing out because it was just weird watching it because the whole time I just thought that Tyson's gonna come back. It's Tyson. Who's this dude, man? Yeah, he won 5 or 6 straight fights. Yeah, he's a big dude, but years after, man, I'm so glad it happened. I'm just so glad it happened because you watch Buster Douglas after the fight giving the interview and he's just crying, bawling because a lot of people forget that 3 weeks before his mom died. So he's fighting despite his mom passing away. He's fighting for his mom. I believe that the mother of his child had some issue going into the fight as well. So he had all that on his mind. And almost makes you wonder, man, like guys can tap into that energy. Athletes can tap into that energy when, let's say, a family member passes away in any sport. And you tap into that energy and you can almost play at or compete at a level that you've never seen before. And I think Buster Douglas tapped into that energy that night. And it's very fitting as well that he came off the canvas to do it. Because a guy like Tyson knocks you down. A guy like Tyson hits you on the chin, goes to the body. You're supposed to give up. And that was the most shocking thing to me is that it seemed like Tyson had it in the bag at that point. And another thing I remember is they looked totally unprepared. I had never seen a glove, like a medical glove with cold water inside of it. And they're using that as inswell from Mike Tyson. And that's how unprepared they were and how shocked they even were probably that this guy could even get beat up or hit in the face or cut or bruised or anything. They didn't expect anybody to touch him. They expected this fight to be over in 90 seconds. Train hard? No. I mean, Mike Tyson was saying he was having sex with multiple Japanese women per night leading up to that fight as he's in Japan. It didn't seem like they had a great training camp at all. I think they expected to just show up as the bully, knock this guy out, and Buster Douglas tapped into something that night, man, and I'm glad he did. Sports needs guys like that, performances like that, and that's what makes sports greater than anything in the world. And that's why sports is this outlet that people can connect through many different demographics and beliefs and philosophies. We can all connect on this. No, we can all celebrate a night like that. And 31 years later, man, Buster Douglas, thanks for giving us that night. And I'm glad it happened, man. I'm glad it happened. Although that week we were all kind of sad. Not kind of, we were very sad. We were kind of in mourning in the cafeteria. But glad it happened. Very glad it happened. I'll trade the Minneapolis Miracle for the '09 champion. Thanks for that Brett Favre interception, man. I love that Brett Favre interception. I was in the Superdome that night, and I thought that y'all were gonna rip our soul out on that drive, and then totally flips. Tracy Porter intercepts Brett Favre. I still don't know why he threw against his body when y'all had a field goal set up already. Amazing, incredible. But the Minneapolis Miracle, man, that hurt. That hurt. That hurt almost as bad as the Rams playoff loss the year after. Almost as bad. That was worse, that no call. But just to wrap this thing up, man, Lomachenko's coming back. Manny Pacquiao's coming back. So throw that into the mix. Throw that into the pot of Canelo wants to fight 4 times this year in 2021. The matchups being discussed. Chocolatito's coming back next month. So you have this old blood still fighting, and then you got this new blood coming up as well. So I just want to see the top guys fight each other. Hopefully that happens in 2021. And I think this year is going to heat up, man. I think it's going to heat up. 2020 obviously was 2020. Let's move past it. Let's have 2021 be a great year for boxing. I think it will, man. Appreciate y'all. Hit that sub button, hit that like button, hit the alerts. And I'll be back tomorrow night. We'll be talking about Teofimo Lopez being shorted money in this next fight. We got to talk about that. Put some respect on Teofimo's name. Put some respect on the guy's name. Give him more than 1.2 million to come back. Team Tyson trying to overturn that fight the next day was horrible too. It was also memorable. 1, 2, 3. Remember, they count to 11, 12, 13. They tried too hard. That was Don King. And Tyson's just sitting there, like, not even saying anything. That was sad. That was very sad, that whole episode. But years later, like I said, I'm glad it happened. So tomorrow we'll be talking about Teofimo, man. Shorting him some money. And Charlo saying he wants to fight once a year. Nah, fam. Nah, man. You got to fight more than that. So hit those alerts, man. CalixBoxing.com as well. Rolling out this weekend. I'll be back to that writing. I'm out, man. Thank y'all for the comments. Peace.